Well, I'll go ahead and share my screen then.
Okay, perfect. While you're doing that, I'll go ahead. I know it's one of your slides, but I wanted to just make a quick introduction to Devon Foster. Not only does she have a really cool last name that was the same as my mother-in-law's maiden name, which just draws me to her, but Megan has a Bachelor of Economics, which is, for those that know me that are watching this recording, just stop right there, because that just like she has my heart. But then she coupled that with anthropology, which I thought, wow, this is some cool girl. And she also has a MA social entrepreneurship, right? An MA in social entrepreneurship. I think what most people don't know is when we go to a lot of these conferences, we wander around in the exhibit hall and we look for the really cool gifts. Well, I have to say, Devon, you guys have some of the most cool gifts, right? First year at one of the NAFA conference, I got some fabulous goat soap that was to die for. Yes. And then the next year I got a cute little ornament. And then this last year, I not only got another cute little ornament, I got a really cool stuffed animal, and I'm a fuzzy, lovey, type of stuffed animal girl. So that brought me to your table, and lucky it did, because as we're gearing up for some of our clients to have really large charitable gifts in some situations, and a fear in some cases to give up money, especially when they don't know if they're going to need it or not, but they have really low cost basis stock or something like that, or maybe they have an overly large amount of a concentrated position that they'd like to diversify, but all sorts of problems that can be solved with some charitable giving. And so we're super excited to have you. And for those of you that look back on the slide, you'll also see that Devon just doesn't know about philanthropy. She actually worked in our profession for a bit, so she knows our profession as well. And I'm again, thank you. Thank you for joining us and for having us here. And hopefully, I've always said Devon. Is that correct?
It is. Okay.
Yes. I'm like, I never asked.
Rhymes with Kevin. Yeah.
I mean, that's the way it looks, but you just never know, right? So again, thank you for joining us, and I'll let you take it away. Of course, I have some questions prepared as you're presenting. And if you do have any questions, go ahead and throw them in the chat for those that are attending, and we'll make sure that we grab those questions.
That sounds great. Thank you so much for having me. All right, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. All right, so
and I love that it's tax efficient, by the way.
This is one of the I think the most useful descriptions when it comes to plant giving is really talking about it's tax efficient, and there's so many different ways of giving, and you really want to give from your heart and what really makes you feel really wonderful and what inspires you. But there's also this aspect of it that comes to your taxes that can be really beneficial. So I'm going to go ahead and next slide. So just real quick, I wanted to introduce, so I'm here with Heifer Foundation. We support the work of Heifer International, whose mission is to end hunger and poverty while caring for the earth. And we do that by working with smallholder and subsistence level farmers in 20 countries around the world. And we provide them with supplies and with training, with access to fair finance to get them up to a sustainable living income. And that incorporates a lot of aspects such as environmentally sustainable, climate smart agricultural techniques. That involves providing them with animals, seeds, materials to provide better shelters for those animals. And the training focuses also on building out communities, self-help groups, and cooperatives and financial education to be as empowered and to earn the most they can. As the foundation, we support Heifer International's work by raising and overseeing assets. So we manage the endowment and plant giving program.
There's so much good, right? There's so much good that comes out of that.
Thank you so much. So, as Amy mentioned, I do a little background in finance and anthropology because I did always want to work in international development. So, I really wanted to be giving back to the world. I've worked at the foundation for 9 years, so this is coming out of my experience here at the foundation. I am a member of the National Association for Charitable Gift Planners, which are great for anyone who's really wanting to get into gift planning. And we're affiliate member of the Financial Planners Association. I really enjoy going to finance conferences because I just get to learn so much. I was at a tax conference last month, and there's always more to learn. So, and in a previous life, I was a FINRA licensed personal banker. I've also done a little bit of nonprofit consulting, consulting as a nonprofit for small and medium-sized enterprises. That was in the Arkansas Delta. And not on here as I am a certified craft beer server. So sometimes nerds have fun as well.
Now, offline, we're going to have to talk about how to become a certified craft beer server.
Wonderful.
I'm going to have to learn more about that.
So today I really just wanted to talk about the landscape of planned giving, tax efficient giving, different charitable giving vehicles that have tax benefits and then also have income generating benefits. But I'm not a tax professional. So please always talk to your financial, legal, tax professionals when you're looking at doing these gifts to make sure that you have it fit right just for your situation. This is always really important, especially when we get into the more complex gifts such as the charitable trust, charitable lead trust, all those. So there's when you can really match your philanthropy, we integrate that into your financial strategy. So when you're looking at this, you can really see, okay, where's my focus right now in terms of my financial strategy? What are my priorities at this moment? So this is kind of how I think of it when we're looking at planned giving. Do you want to focus on tax savings? Or do you also want to look at tax savings as well as having some income in the future? Or are you really focused on making sure that you're focusing on income at the moment? You really need to grow your retirement right now. So there are strategies that you can implement that involve, really charities making a difference in the world that kind of go along this whole spectrum. So when it comes to tax savings, you can just always make a straight outright gift. You can do that with cash. You can do that with appreciated securities, which is what we really always recommend. You can also put charities as the beneficiary of your IRA. In your wills and trusts, you can establish an endowment with a charity, or you can establish a donor advised fund or a family foundation. So these are all direct gifts to charity. You're not getting income from it. But you get a larger upfront tax deduction, especially when it comes to appreciated securities, because as you transfer those to the charity, we are tax exempt, and therefore we liquidate them once you've transferred them to us, and then you don't have that liquidity event on your hands. So when it comes to, if you're looking at combining tax savings and income, then you have these options. There's really great options. Charitable gift annuities are really popular. We typically do a lot in December. You can now do a qualified charitable distribution. And I think I skipped over that a little bit on the tax savings option. But if you have an IRA, you don't need, or you have a pre-tax account and you don't need all of that income, but you do need to make that R&D, you can just send a portion of that directly to a charity. You don't get a tax deduction, but you don't have to claim that as income and pay the income taxes on that distribution. So that is a really nice way to support your favorite charities as well. And sometimes it's just simple. But now with the latest legislation, there are qualified charitable distribution gift annuities, as well as charitable trusts. I'll get into that a little bit later, but it is an option.
You saw the question.
Yes. And then you can also, there's a charitable trust, and charitable trusts come in all colors and flavors. And there's a lot of variety there, a lot of solutions. Those are a little bit more complex. And then if you are focused on income, you can, have a really positive impact in the world using your money by looking at values aligned investing, whether you're screening for things that you don't want to invest in, or if you're proactively saying, I want to invest in green energy. There's a whole variety of ways you can align your money with your values, have an impact in that way, and not be sacrificing on those income gains that you need to focus on for your retirement plans. So this was my mind map, but I just wanted to put it here that there's you have the lines, you have the outright gifts, then the life income gifts, then you have your estate gifts, and then your funds that you established. And there's tax advantages to all of them, and then there's other benefits as well. I'm not going to spend too much time on here. I just wanted to. This is available as a resource for reasons that this can be very useful.
Mm-hmm.
So direct gifts, again, we kind of mentioned cash, really quick and easy. If you just need a big tax deduction and you have cash sitting there, you can wire it, you can mail a check. Especially now that we're in December, most charities go by the postmark date on an envelope that you send. So if you're at the end of the month and you need to make that contribution for tax deductions in this year, go ahead and put it in the mail and get that postmark on it for December. The only time this doesn't count is if you have filled out one of those forms with your credit card number. I spent a lot of time on the IRS website trying to figure out if it counted, but because it's not a legal tender the way a check is, if you've just written out the credit card number. So we actually do have to run it in the month for that to count. But if you're sending a check, then that postmark date is your gift date. And this also goes for, if you're sending that to open a gift annuity or a charitable trust. Mm-hmm. Appreciated assets are always great to give to charity. If you've got stocks, bonds, mutual funds, you can give gifts of real estate. And this is wonderful because it doesn't create that taxable event for you by liquidating it yourself. And then your gift amount is the tax deduction is at the full market value of that appreciated asset. So I used to process our stock gifts. We would get the gift date was the date that it was transferred into our account. It's typically 1 to 2 business days from the day it was transferred out of the donor's account. We get the average market value of the date that it came into our accounts, and that's how we calculate. Multiplied by the number of shares. That's how we calculate your tax deduction. And that is what the tax deduction at full market value as opposed to what we got in cash. So if the stocks changed in value in those between the time we received them and we liquidate them, we either just eat the loss or keep the gain. Either way, they tend to balance each other out. Retirement assets.
Benefit to that. Yeah. A lot of people ask me, well, if I have stock, let's say that I have legacy stock, that maybe my family has gifted to me, not that I inherited, but that they have gifted to me. And it was from grandpa from 1974, and it has basis of $1,000, but it's got a value of $30,000. The benefit to that is if you sell it, you have to pay capital gains tax on it. If you transfer it in a charitable donation in any way, shape, or form, in most cases, you'd be able to take the full $30,000 gift credit. So this assumes that you itemize, which is why I said $30,000. So $30,000 would be your gift donation amount, not the $1,000. That can be a big deal. Right. Especially if we're bunching charitable donations. I don't know if you have a lot of clients that do this, Devon, but some of our clients every other year will give really big. And then, like towards the end of the year, will just be like almost like a dual donation in 1 year so that they can itemize in 1 year. And then the next year they don't itemize. And so they do this every other year just to be able to try to maximize the itemizations, especially now standard deduction is so high.
Exactly. Yeah. And we see that a little bit. I've established some larger annuities and larger endowments in the last couple of years. I think for that reason. And that is also on the flip side why some of the qualified charitable distributions have become so popular for people who don't itemize. because they're not going to get that tax deduction anyway. They might as well take it out of the income that they
income. Yeah. And we've seen, I don't know, this might be getting too far down another road, but we've actually seen it help people on their Medicare premium when they're willing to do the QCD, because it will prohibit them from going into an IRMA level or a new IRMA level. Yeah.
That's great. That's really great.
Because it's not taxable income. So it doesn't count when they're calculating the AGI or the MAGI, right? So yeah, we've used that when we're doing some calculations. If somebody's right on the line of going into IRMA or going into a high level of IRMA, it's a great way to, if you're taking RMDs or, and that's what's causing it, and you're charitably inclined anyways, that's a way that you can help.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And retirement assets, also typically, what we've heard, you don't want to leave that to your kids because it creates a higher tax burden. So that's a really great opportunity that's a great vehicle to say, okay, this is what I'm going to leave to charity after my lifetime. And then, we don't have that tax burden. So yeah, that's always a really great option for charitable giving. And life insurance is an interesting one. There's a lot of different flexibility, different options. You can make arrangements with the charity where you're paying the premiums or they're paying the premiums. You can also cash it back out and just donate, so there's a lot of different options. We got a few of these, but it's kind of, it's one of those more creative charitable giving vehicles. So with life income gifts, charitable gift annuities are really popular with a lot of the donors I work with. They're really easy to do. We can, get those we can get you an estimate in a day. You send us the check or the stock gifts, and we can get it opened really quickly. And it does take that amount. A lot of times I'm working with donors who they do want to take that out of their estate. They want to make things easy on their executor, especially if they don't have kids. Maybe it's a nephew who's doing it for them. They like the upfront tax deduction, and most especially it's that security of the income for life. You're mentioning, are we, we want to giving that large gift, but also not sure what income is going to look like in 10 years. So I find that's really popular, especially with single women. It's been a really really popular vehicle. We can also do deferred gift annuities, that type of thing. So you get a little bit more. You don't take the income now, but you get the tax deduction up front, which can be great if you're planning to retire in a few years and you're making as much income as you are ever going to make. So the tax deduction up front is really great. And then you'll take that income later and you get a better rate because
that's a great idea
sitting there.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And for that, because that seems to be an area that I've been talking to a lot of clients about with some appreciated stock. For that, one of the things that I think is, pensions have gone by the wayside for a lot of clients. They don't have the traditional pensions. And not that the charitable gift annuity can replace a traditional pension completely, but it can help, right? It can cover some of the basic sort of monthly expenses that you have. So you're taking something that is appreciated in value. You're taking the volatility off the table.
Exactly.
Right. And you're getting an annuity payment and I noticed in here it says income for life, partially tax free. I do want to accentuate that, but you still get the tax deduction up front or partial tax deduction up front. So it can, and if you defer it, it actually can be something that kicks in at a later time when you do retire. I really love those. And I don't want to take away from the rest of them, especially the QCD gift annuity I want to dig into, but the go ahead and keep talking about the charitable remainder trust and the charitable lead trust too.
Well, and I could show real quick on the next slide. I can come back to this. On the next slide, I actually have just a very simple run through of what a gift annuity would look like for somebody age 70. We start at ours minimum is $10,000. I've done $200,000, $500,000 annuities as well. So you get a partial charitable tax deduction, which is based on the estimate of how much will be left over after the donor's lifetime. And then you get that fixed payment. So it's not fluctuating with the markets. It's fixed amount of that principal that you transfer to us of that full gift value. So if you give us 10,000, if the rate, the rate is 5.9%, then you're getting that's $590 every year. So you can depend on that. We guarantee that. So that's invested against it's guaranteed with our endowment and our annuity funds.
So it doesn't matter what the market does, is what you're saying, right? If the market goes up, I still get 590. If the market goes down, I still get 590. It's a guaranteed amount. Yeah.
Exactly. And because a portion of that is tax-free, so there's it's sort of spread out of your lifetime. There's a portion of it that's your principal, and there's a portion of it that's the growth. And so it's equivalent to, say, if you're receiving a slightly higher interest rate of a commercial annuity that you would have to pay taxes on as full income. In this estimate, I did not include a capital cost, like if you had appreciated securities. But if you did fund an annuity with appreciated securities, then your payments are sort of a layer cake payment. So you have a portion that's tax-free, a portion that's taxed at capital gains, and you have a portion that's taxed as ordinary income. I helped the gentleman establish an annuity actually for the benefit of his brother a couple years back, that it was securities that had been gifted to him by a parent. The securities were appreciated 99%.
Ooh.
And I thought that was a typo, and I had to go back and say, is this correct? And he said yes, because it had not been, he hadn't inherited them, so he didn't get that step up in basis. He had been gifted them during his parents' lifetime. And so this was a really great opportunity for him to benefit the charity and make a gift for his brother without incurring that huge liquidity event, taxable of liquidating those himself. And
that was a win-win, wasn't it?
Absolutely. And so also with charitable gift annuities, we don't do, some commercial annuities, you have a health checkup, and we don't, it's just solely based on your age and how many people are on it. You can do 1 to 2 lives, and whether you're deferring it or not. So it's just a straight across. There's none of that extra steps to it.
In this example, you're just showing $10,000. So if somebody was doing $100,000, it would be a very big different number that they'd be looking at. Yeah,
absolutely. Exactly. And most charities go by the American Council on Gift Annuities suggested charitable gift rates. So this is kind of your standard rate sheet of, okay, if you're 80, that's a 7.6% payout. And we kind of cap it out at 90 because it gets a little risky for the charity to make anything. If you've made it to 90, there's a good chance you're going to make it to 100. So qualified charitable distribution gift annuities. This one is interesting, and I've spoken to a few people, and it's you'd have to have a very specific, unique situation in your life where you would have a particularly high RMD or liquidity event where you are going to be taxed. I accidentally clicked on it. You could make a once per lifetime up to $50,000 qualified charitable distribution into a life income vehicle. You couldn't do this before. It was considered double dipping by the IRS. So because then you would get tax deduction on something you'd never paid taxes on in the first place. This, with the QC gift annuities, you don't get any upfront tax deduction, and the payments are fully taxable as income. So you are taking that $50,000 out of your IRA. So again, you're not leaving that to an heir who's going to have a tax burden from that. And after your lifetime, it goes to the remaining. I don't know if I mentioned that after your lifetime, whatever's remaining of the annuity funds then rolls over to the charity. So it's kind of just a way of spreading out that retirement that large distribution from your IRA. Just spreading
It's
the
just
payments
another way
out.
of giving money though, and making sure that you're not giving too much away. I think it's, if somebody really, like if, somebody has a deep passion for Heifer International, for example, right? They can give $50,000 without the risk of like, oh man, I might need that money in the future, or I might need that income stream in the future. So it's a way to give that $50,000 now, turn it into I want to, a lower risk from a standpoint of volatility, because now it truly does turn into an income stream. So I think if you're trying to there's something about giving while you're alive, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot to be said about giving while you're alive. And we talk to our clients about this all the time. Do you want to wait till you're dead to give to your kids, or do you want to give them when they need the help right now? There's something, if you can afford it, there's something to be said about that. But with a lot of people, and you're absolutely right, especially with single women, the only income they can depend on is theirs. The only assets they depend on is theirs.
Absolutely.
So they're a little more reserved when it comes to giving. But if they are going to receive large RMDs, this is a nice way of taking, in some cases, 1 year of RMDs and doing good with that, and still being able to depend on the income that comes out of it. So I know it's a limited scope utilization, but it is something that somebody could use, and they could pair it. If they have appreciated assets, they could also do like after-tax assets. They could still do a charitable gift annuity in a combination with a QCD gift annuity if they wanted to.
Right. They would have to be two separate vehicles, but absolutely.
Right.
And yeah, we have people that have opened multiple gift annuities over time. They just, all right, let me just do another one then. Yeah, absolutely.
Once they see how that operation works, they like it, is what I'm hearing.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So
sorry, I sidebarred you.
no,
Sorry about that.
that's
Go ahead.
perfect. That was perfect. And any other questions I know, because that is a new one. And you can also you can use your one-time QCD to a charity distribution for a CRT as well. But at $50,000, there's not a lot of people I've really spoken to that have really found that would be useful for their client's situation. So charitable remainder trusts. There's a lot of different options. The biggest difference between a charitable remainder trust and charitable gift annuity. So with remainder trusts, you can add to them. So throughout your lifetime, you can make additional contributions into that same charitable trust. But charitable trusts are, unless it's an annuity trust, which you can't do quite the same, additions to it. But charitable remainder unit trust, you get a fixed percentage, typically we do 5% of the market value of your trust. So it is subject to fluctuations of the market, which during the high interest rate environment, that's great. But if it's a lower interest rate, the trust can, you're burning down on that trust a little bit more, because trust can also run out of money. With the annuity trust. So you might get less payments 1 year because the markets weren't doing as well. So if you really are depending on that security of income, then annuities are better for budget purposes. But trusts have a little more flexibility. You can put additional beneficiaries for term of years on them. You can do for life or term of years yourself as well. And you can actually, it's a little easier so for the foundation, this is the only vehicle that we can accept real estate into. So if you have, great examples, if you would have a vacation home and you're ready to sell it, but it's really appreciated. So if you put that into a charitable remainder trust with us, then we go ahead and sell it, and then you live off the proceeds, and you have that appreciation. The capital gains is spread out over your lifetime of payments. And you can also typically add more than one charity as a beneficiary. Typically, if the charity who's holding it would prefer, a certain percentage go to them afterwards. You can also do charitable trust either with your commercial trustee. We do act as fiduciary for those who choose to do that with us. So we get to send out the tax forms every year.
You're up.
Yep. K1 season every March. But yeah, this is another great way to support your favorite charities and to support your family. With annuity trusts, charitable annuity trust, you do have, it is more fixed percentage, but you can burn down on that. And I believe that is also, there are some other benefits, but it's always going to depend on your tax situation, what your new securities or asset appreciation situation is going to be. We've had donors who had farmland that as they sold it off, they opened charitable trusts. They were the first beneficiaries, and then they had younger family members be the term of year beneficiaries after their lifetimes. They chose not to take the income, and they would reinvest. They would just add that income right back into it. They did pay a little bit of income tax on it, but then they would get, partial tax deduction again. So they would keep reinvesting those distributions back into the trust in order to benefit their nieces and nephews. And it was just the sweetest thing. But they could also, as they sold, as they were ready to sell off various land, then they could transfer it into the trust as they went. You can't have a buyer in the wings for a charitable random trust. So you have to make the decision to go ahead and do that before you've had anybody else make any offers or anything. It's really interesting little IRS rules around that.
But then eventually the charity gets the asset. Like eventually with a charitable remainder trust, you mentioned the benefits to the family, because you were saying it could be, income for life, or it could be to a certain year, like and you mentioned nieces and nephews actually getting some benefit out of it. But eventually the charity does get the residual proceeds.
Yes. So, and that's why with secondary beneficiaries, it's typically limited to a term of years. At least in the way that we do them, so that after 20 years, then we go ahead and close the trust and roll those funds into, an endowment that we established in their name or into the general endowment. And so, that's the charitable portion. So if you weren't doing them, that you wouldn't get that upfront tax deduction. Charitable lead trusts are far more complex vehicle, but they're the inverse of a charitable remainder trust. And they have the benefit of, this is one way that you can actually, depending on how it's structured, this is one of the few charitable gift vehicles that you can actually transfer closely held business shares into. Depending on how it's structured. There's so many different ways to do this, and there's tax implications of it depending on whether it's grantor trust or non-grantor trust, and whether you're going to pay income on the payments or not. But the payments is inverted from a charitable remainder trust in that the payments first go to the charity. Distributions from the trust go to the charity first for a term of years or the lifetime of the donor. And then after that agreed upon point, then the remainder goes to heirs. So this is really to be a very helpful one for family situations.
But very complex. Those are ones that we really were like, okay, the whole team needs to sit down and talk about this. Absolutely. Like your attorney, your tax provider, your financial planner, your charitable organizations. Everybody needs to sit down at the table and talk about this particular one. It's not one that I see used all that often. I would say in the past, charitable remainder trusts were the ones that I saw used the most, although charitable gift annuities tend to be now what people are looking at and are very interested in. And of course, the QCD gift annuities are starting to pique some people's interest just from a standpoint of, hey, it's one more way. Now I have two vehicles that I can use if I really want to generate income and do good in the world at the same time. But I rarely see charitable lead trusts be used. As I think we talked about at one of the conferences. I worked for a couple of trust departments in my past life, as I like to say, and so these were tools that we used within the trust department, but the charitable lead trusts were ones that everybody had to get involved in because we had to pool our resources of knowledge and experience to make sure that it was done right too. So it's pretty complex.
Exactly.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing all those different kinds of charitable vehicles, the tax savings plus income, because I think that that's really one of the things that a lot of people are very afraid of when they start gifting annuity or start gifting money is, but what if I need it in the future? And another aspect of it is too, some people look at it and say, I saved all of this money. I've done all the planning I think I can, I'm going to try to stay independent for as long as I can. But boy, I would really love to have one of my favorite charities have something from me, even if I have to spend down all of my assets. And this is a really great way to make sure that happens.
Absolutely.
All right. So there was that closer look that we did.
Absolutely. So we can. And then, so I tend to work a little bit more often in the wills and trusts and estates questions. So, a really easy way to benefit your favorite charities to put them in your will. And it takes that out of, what's happening to what you're leaving to someone else. So that you get them, if you're concerned that they're going to hit, if a state income, state inheritance tax. So I'm in Oregon. Oregon and Washington have some of the lowest state estate taxes. So you can kind of divide those out in your will, but they're easy, it's simple, and you can always revoke it. So if you change your mind or something else comes up that's really important to you, then you can make those differences. Trusts are, also fairly simple. You've got all sorts of different options you can do for your trusts, and you can just again write those your favorite charities and including there. But really, we say our retirement assets are the best things to leave to charity. To take that away from your heirs as an income burden, and really all it takes is filling out a form with your IRA administrator. I say this, I need to update mine. So I say it's easy, but then I know it's getting the forms and stuff.
Well, our clients hear about it every single year. We do a beneficiary review with all of our clients once a year, so that this can come up. So if they're interested in changing their beneficiary or naming a charitable trust, we can do that. We put it in their face at least once a year to make sure that that's updated, because just life changes, right? So it's really important that be talked about.
Absolutely. There's also a really popular giving vehicle that has come about lately is the donor advised fund. And a lot of people are moving to this from establishing separate family foundations. So donor advised funds are funds that are held at a charity, you can do them, with a fiduciary, the charitable arm of an investment company, or you can do them with your favorite charity if they have a donor advised fund program, or you can do that with your local community foundation. So there's a variety of ways that you can establish donor advised funds. But this is, when we talk back to bunching. So if if you don't need that income, but you would really like to make, be able to itemize your charitable deductions, and that you're going to want to make these commitments every year to the charity, but it's not enough to itemize. You can put the 3 to 5 years worth of your charitable donations into a donor advised fund, and then make the distributions every year from the fund. And this is also great if you have a high taxable year or high liquidity event, and you want to you need to kind of offset that with a large charitable deduction, but maybe you don't know all of the charities that you want to support yet and haven't come up with a plan, and you're still talking to them. Kind of buys you some time while getting that upfront deduction. It has that flexibility. You can bring family in as co-advisors, or kind of, one of the things that people always tell me that they love about Heifer was that, every year my grandparents get the gift catalog. We sit down and we look through it and get to pick out what we wanted to give, to chickens or a cow or water buffalo, each year. And so you can kind of do that with the donor advised fund. Say, okay, get the grandkids in and say, like, what charities do we want to, so what causes do we want to support this year? So that's one of the reasons that people really love donor advised funds. You can also use it as a bequest vehicle. So you can then list a charity or multiple charities as the beneficiaries after your lifetime. So they close it out and distribute it to those charities. And it's, you don't currently, I know there's talk about having some legislation that might change this a little bit, although the proposals that are currently out there are very minimal. There's no distribution requirement. So there's a little bit less pressure, but it's fun to give. So, that's kind of one of those things that you can sit down with your advisors and your family and really have that meaningful conversation. But you don't have the pressure to do so every year.
Yeah, right. And until the sunset of the tax law in 2025, we don't know what's going to happen, right? So for a lot of people, at least for 2023, 2024, and 2025, that's still very challenging to meet to do anything other than the standard deduction, unless you're doing some really big giving. You have a lot of mortgage interest, or you're, those are really the tools that are going to drive you into the category of being able to itemize. So we've had a lot of people, because we don't know, we only know what our current tax law is, and we don't know what's going to happen in the future. So we've had a number of people bunching for the last couple of years, just knowing that we don't know what's going to happen in the future. And they want the money there to be able to donate. And some people are doing it while they're working and making sure that there's sufficient funds in their working years and their income earning years so that they can donate throughout their retirement years as well, and not feel like it's coming out of income necessarily, or, because when you go into that decumulation mode, it takes a couple of years to get in the comfort zone of that. And so people are trying to figure out ways, well, how can I still give in the future, but not feel like, it's got to come out of income. And donor advised funds have been great for that too, in our client base. Yeah.
It also seems like it's a really good opportunity for, just budgeting purposes as a family. You've got different ideas of what, especially with aging concerns, if people are getting a lot of requests and maybe there's not a lot of communication going on in the household about what's going out. And, this can be an agreed upon way. Okay, we're going to set aside this much. And then that's what you can send those distributions from, but it's already agreed ahead of time.
That's a true statement. It's coming, especially if you have a person who has that love and belonging personality, and then you have another person in the relationship that's safety and soundness personality. There are two conflicting personalities when it comes to one, not safety and soundness in the way that we think about it in Maslow's. This is more psychological safety and soundness. They're also known as being cheap sometimes. But if you have those two personalities in the same household, one's a giver and one's, we're going to run out of money if you keep doing that. If you can come to the middle of the table and say, we can afford this, and both parties can agree on it and put it in a donor advised fund, that's another way of like you said, budgeting the amount that goes to charity, and both people are happy. So I'm saying it can save a marriage too.
Exactly. Yeah. And I just always, this is something that I've seen at a few conferences, tax presentations lately, is kind of comparing the traditional establishing your own family foundation versus a donor advised fund. And family foundations can be really fun, and there's a lot of different ways you can do them. You can set them up as a corporation or as a trust. And, the Patagonia did kind of a split, one advocacy and one foundation trust with the shares of the business, which was really interesting. It brought a lot of this conversation up. With the family foundation, you can, if it's established as a corporation, you can hire family. So if you have family members that you want to create a career option for, this can be one avenue. Of course, it has to be structured right. And you get more flexibility. You get to choose, again, depending on whether it's a corporation or a trust, but you have more choice over the investments with the donor advised fund. It's the whoever is holding it is making those investments really, and actually whoever is holding it is the ultimate say about where your distributions go, because they do have there's a lot of regulation around what charities they can support. So if there's any concerns, there's anti-terrorism laws and things like what causes it can receive money and where it's going in or out of the country. So ultimately, whoever's holding the donor advised fund has that final say. Whereas Family Foundation, I mean, there's a lot of regulation, but you get more control over it. But you are setting up an entire institution, the Family Foundation. So there's so much more overhead and regulation, and you do have a distribution requirement every year. So you have to make that. And so that's going to be a burden on, if you have a family that really loves giving, but they've got their own life and they're not going to be carrying this on for you, and you really want to think about that when you're kind of looking at these options. And I think that was all I had today. I always recommend, if you are interested in charitable giving, have your financial, work with your financial planner and call us as the gift officers at your charities, because we can really help, provide the estimates, of course, for the gift vehicles. We can also, if you are getting swamped with bail, we can change that. We can protect your client anonymity. And what I always love to do is, with the donors I'm working with, I try to visit various areas on a regular basis and like to do things that are engaging and fun with donors. We don't necessarily have work in the U.S. that donors can come see. But we are farmer related. So I like to take donors to local sustainable farms or alpaca farms, and we go on a little tour and learn about those things. And it's just a really fun time.
Yeah. Well, Devon, I want to say thank you so much for sharing all of this knowledge with everyone. Oh my gosh, how cute. I want to say thank you so much for sharing all of the knowledge. For people that are interested, you've got your card up there. If they're interested in the Heifer Foundation, we do have a number of our clients that already donate to the Heifer Foundation. So again, some of them, as I mentioned to you, reached out to me and said, I can't attend, but I just love that. The idea of learning more about this, and they love the idea of learning more about it from an association of the Heifer Foundation and all that you do, and all of the education and knowledge that you've shared with us today. So appreciate it personally. I feel like this is something that you can't learn it once and remember it. It's got to be. It's got to be something that is brought up many, many times, and right place, right time for a lot of people. So really want to say again, thank you for taking the time out of your early afternoon.
Early afternoon, yeah.
And hopefully we appreciate, again, hopefully you'll join us again in the future to talk about things like this. We just absolutely love sharing this kind of knowledge. I might even post a note in our podcast just for people for, year-end ideas. It's probably at this point in time, it's going to be a challenge if somebody's trying to make last-minute decisions on some of these big items. Right. But it's something that's there for next year. And we're not big resolution people, but we are big about planning early for things that you want to do in any particular year. So if anybody is listening to this and this has been something that you're more interested in and we haven't had a discussion, please reach out to me as well. I'd be happy to do a joint meeting between Devon and myself if it made sense for you. Again, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. And I don't see any questions in the chat, but I think that just says you did a fabulous job. So,
well, thank you so much. This was so much fun. Really, really appreciate this opportunity to talk about all the things I've learned over the years.
Great when you get to talk about things you're passionate about, right?
Yeah, absolutely.